Hi, this is Dr. Perry Carpenter. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to join me on this week's discussion. In this week's discussion, we're in our second session regarding the one-year anniversary update on the new medical legal fee schedule. Yes, it's true, at the time of this recording, the new medical legal fee schedule is approaching its one-year anniversary, and still to this date, if you can believe it, still to this date, almost 1 year after the official adoption of the new medical legal fee schedule on April 1st, 2021, we're still uncovering new, unusual curveballs, twists, and applications of the new medical legal fee schedule that continue to surprise, amaze, and catch us off guard with permutations and usages of the new medical legal fee schedule that we could never have anticipated way back when the so-called stakeholders were meeting in an effort to hash out and agree upon what has now become our new medical legal fee schedule. And I can speak with authority about those days because I myself was present at the last 2 of 4 of the fee schedule committee meetings. And so I can tell you exactly how the conversation went down. I can tell you how the parties played out their hands. I can tell you who stood up and pointed fingers. And I can share with you the disconcerting revelations that each party, each player, each stakeholder exposed to each other about their dirty incentives in attempting to arrive at something more favorable from their own perspective. And I'm going to share with you some of the incentives and perspectives that became exposed, unearthed, and discovered at the Medical Legal Fee Schedule Committee meetings. Well, here we are almost 1 year later, and still it's amazing to see how the new medical legal fee schedule has changed the entirety of the QME face-to-face evaluation and the QME report writing process as we came to know it for over a decade under the old medical legal fee schedule. So what I want to share with you today are some new discoveries that we've had over the past, say, 90 days about unusual applications of the new medical legal fee schedule and how those applications reveal the stakeholders, the parties, the players' incentives to exploit the new medical legal fee schedule to their own advantage. And I want you to know, when we talk about incentives and exploiting the new medical legal fee schedule, I want you to know that I don't consider any of this behavior to be abnormal. It's simply an effort by the parties, by the players, by the stakeholders, and I'm referring to those persons, those players, as the QMEs, the attorneys, the claims payers, the applicant attorney, the defense attorney, all of the parties involved in the medical legal evaluation have an incentive in the way that they order, use, and pay for the medical legal evaluations that we as qualified medical evaluators perform and conduct. And the exercise of incentive is nothing that we should be surprised about. It's nothing that we should be ashamed of in our own case in exercising our own incentives. It's nothing that should come to us as any type of a new revelation or shock, because persons, players, beings in general always operate along the line of their incentives, down the gradient of their incentives. It's like a ball falling through air down the gravitational gradient, or it's like molecules in a beaker diffusing along the lines of a concentration gradient. Persons, parties, players, and beings always operate along the lines of their incentive gradients, and there's nothing abnormal about this. It's something that we simply need to know in order to understand why it is that we continue to face difficulties in billing and getting paid for our medical legal evaluations under the new medical legal fee schedule. And I'll have much more to say about incentives as we continue with today's discussion. Now, in today's discussion, I want to review with you again the billing codes that we now have access to under the new medical legal fee schedule, and we're going to break out these billing codes under the microscope and dissect them and expose the incentive operative in each of the billing codes that each of the parties leverages to their own advantage under the new medical legal fee schedule. And I want to show you how sometimes the parties' incentives and our incentives as qualified medical evaluators are aligned and harmonious, but more often than that, the incentives of the parties, the payers, and the players are in conflict with the incentives of us as qualified medical evaluators. And in those circumstances where we encounter conflicting incentives, I want to share with you some ideas as to how you can remain profitable in a system where the parties want to extract more and more work from you for a lower and lower fee. And I hope this doesn't come as any kind of a surprise to you, as it came to me at the Medical Legal Fee Schedule Committee meetings. So I want to share with you what we know about each of our new medical legal billing codes. I want to share with you how to conduct your evaluation when you find yourself in an evaluation based upon one of these particular and specific billing codes. And then I want to share with you some ideas as to how you can create efficiency in your medical legal evaluation such that no matter what curveballs the parties throw at you, what billing disputes, what fee reductions, what curveballs the parties throw you, you can always be prepared and always come out of the evaluation profitable and in the black versus the opposite, which is in the red and over your head and losing money on these evaluations. So I have a fascinating dissection for you today of the new medical legal fee schedule, one of which I'm sure is going to change your very operating procedures on your very next evaluation. So with that as our introduction, let's begin today's discussion on the new medical legal fee schedule survival guide. Okay, so let's begin by taking a look at the new medical legal billing codes that we're now using under this new system. And I want to share with you where it is in each of these codes that there is a hidden incentive both of the payers and the players and us, payers and players on the one hand, and us as qualified medical evaluators on the other hand. So here are all the medical legal billing codes that we commonly use and have at our disposal under our new fee schedule system. So as you know, the ML200 describes the missed appointment fee. The missed appointment fee provides for $503.75 when, and this is important, when that appointment is canceled within 6 business days of the appointment date. So all of a sudden, as we review the definition of this, you can start to imagine what could be the incentive of the players when dealing with an appointment that has to be changed and or canceled. The next billing code is the ML201. The ML201 is our most common billing code. This deals with our basic medical legal evaluation, and it includes up to 200 pages of medical records. So when we have a new evaluation of an examinee with 199 or even 200 pages of medical records, we get paid $2,015, and the Division of Workers' Compensation estimates that this evaluation should take us about 6 hours and 12 minutes, and if we can complete the entirety of the evaluation in 6 hours and 12 minutes, then we can expect to receive our new hourly rate of approximately $325 per hour. Now, of course, any time beyond 6 hours and 12 minutes starts to erode the hourly rate. So this 6 hours and 12 minutes should become your goal for the completion of one of these evaluations. And of course, that could be much quicker, or let me say you could easily meet this time allocation or even exceed the time allocation if the page count of medical records diminishes from 200 pages down to less or even much less pages of medical records. Okay, then we have the ML202. This describes our re-evaluation or our second or third or fourth face-to-face evaluation with the examinee. And again, this includes up to 200 pages of medical records. Now this is interesting because for this evaluation, we get paid only $1,316.25, which if you do the math brings the entirety of the evaluation to about 4 hours, 4.05 hours. Now what's interesting is that both the basic ML201 and the ML202 both include the same numbers of page counts of medical records, but the reimbursement rate between the two is about $700 less. So you might ask yourself, well, what is less? What is less about the re-evaluation than the initial evaluation here? What is less about it for which I receive approximately $700 less reimbursement? It's not the page count of medical records that's less. So why is it reimbursed less? Well, I can only presume that the parties feel or believe or think that because you've already seen this examinee on one prior occasion, that you already have the history. But that may be true, but even so, on a reevaluation, you still need to take an interval history and find out what's happened in the time between the last evaluation and now. So it might be that the history could turn out to be the same amount of time as obtaining the history for the basic ML evaluation here. Well, what else could be less? Well, I guess the examinee is already entered into your database and you already have the demographics and you already have the billing information. So something about the reevaluation must be less to justify a lower reimbursement rate for the reevaluation, even though the pages of medical records are the same. So you might ask yourself, how is it? How is it that the reevaluation is less? Well, I can tell you what's certain. What's certain is you get paid for approximately 2 hours less. So it's up to you to make sure that that reevaluation is done quickly in a much shorter amount of time than you would take for doing your initial evaluation. Next, we have the supplemental report. The supplemental report includes up to 50 pages of medical records, for which we receive a flat rate fee of $650, and this should take you about 2 hours. Now, it will certainly take you less time, the lesser amount of time, the lesser amount of pages of medical records that you receive, and your time will start to expand as your pages of medical records exceeds 50 pages. So let me ask you, would you rather have a supplemental report with 2 pages of medical records for $650, or would you rather have a supplemental report with 51 pages of medical records for $653, the $3 representing the 1 additional page of medical records? Well, of course, you would certainly prefer to have a supplemental report with fewer pages of medical records so as to minimize your time involved with that evaluation. Next is our ML204. This deals with our deposition testimony. Deposition testimony, we get paid $455 per hour with a 2-hour minimum for a total of $910, and that's not too bad of a deal. That's actually a pretty good deal. And I'll explain to you how incentives operate to erode this hourly rate, and I'll share with you some systems that you can employ to protect your hourly rate. Next, we have the ML205, which deals with sub-rosa videotaping. I'm not going to deal with that at length here because that happens so rarely. But more commonly, we use the modifier code -93 to bill for our interpreter fee. The interpreter fee modifier -93 provides for an additional 10% additional 10%, which on the basic ML evaluation at 2015 provides for an extra 10% at 201.50. Now the reason, and I was at the fee schedule committee meetings, the reason for having an interpreter fee bump is because having challenges to communication with the examinee results in a lengthier, more time-intensive face-to-face evaluation. It doesn't increase the time involved with the report writing. It doesn't increase the time involved with any of the admin. This simply relates to the extra time involved in the face-to-face. So for that, they give us an extra 10%, which is an extra $201.50. So that's a good thing, as long as you make sure that your time involved in the face-to-face evaluation doesn't get too extended and too lengthy beyond that which would be reimbursed by this amount of money, which is approximately, I'm going to estimate, maybe 35 minutes. 35 minutes. This pays for approximately 35 minutes of additional face-to-face time. And then finally, we have the -PRR billing code, which is the billing modifier code that we use to describe our additional pages of medical records. And for each additional pages of medical records, beyond 50 for the supplemental report, beyond 200 for the reevaluation, and beyond 200 for the initial evaluation, we get to bill an additional $3 per page for each of those medical records. Okay, so now that we have all of the codes established, let's take a look at what these codes actually pay for and how these codes contain incentives for each of the parties, each of the players, each of the payers, and even us as qualified medical evaluators. And let me share with you how these fee schedules, these billing codes, are exploited by the various players to exercise their own incentives. Okay, so let's take a look at what those various fees under those various billing codes actually cover. Well, so here we are at the Division of Workers' Compensation's website, and here we see California Code of Regulations 9795, which describes for us the reasonable level of fees for medical legal expenses, for follow-up, for supplemental, and for comprehensive medical legal evaluations and medical legal testimony. So those are all of the service descriptors that we talked about. Now I want you to notice here in subsection B, it tells us that the fee for each medical legal evaluation procedure includes reimbursement for the history and physical examination. It includes reimbursement for the review of records. It includes reimbursement for the preparation of a medical legal report, including typing and transcription services. And it includes overhead expenses. It includes all of the overhead. So what we didn't show on the prior slide was we didn't show all of the expenses that are associated with each of these basic medical legal billing codes. And of course, none of the overhead expenses can be captured in any of the descriptions of those billing codes. So that's why the Division of Workers' Compensation here tells us that the fees that we get reimbursed, and here they all are, $503.75 for the missed appointment, $2,015 for the basic appointment, $1,316 for the reevaluation, $650 for the supplemental report, $455 for the deposition testimony, and $3 per page for additional pages of medical records, and an additional 10% when using the interpreter modifier. All of those fees, whatever they may be for whatever level of service, includes all costs. All costs. Now I'm going to share with you some of the costs that you may not have thought of, that you may not have realized, that you incur as a medical legal evaluator in providing each of these services, and I want to show you how those costs can be escalated, greatly escalated, if you're not careful, as the parties exercise their incentive to get as much work from you for the lowest possible cost to them as a claims payer. So you need not be surprised by this, but let's go over some of these incentives that each of the various parties exercise under these various billing codes. So let's take a look at some of these various codes. Now let's use the ML201 as an example. The Division of Workers' Compensation estimates that we should spend approximately 3 hours on the totality of the evaluation if we want to capture our hourly billing rate of $325 per hour, which is the hourly rate that was established by the state auditor in the state auditor's late 2000, I think it was 19, or maybe it was 2020, November 2020. Yeah, November 2020 state auditor's report established that our hourly rate as qualified medical evaluators should be, when adjusted for costs and inflation and cost of living increases, should be approximately $325 per hour. So at that hourly billing rate, the DWC estimates that it should take us about 6 hours to complete our evaluation. And the Division of Workers' Compensation tells us through CCR 9795 that fee, the $2,015 fee, pays the entire cost of obtaining the history and physical exam, the entire cost in performing a review of records, the entire cost of preparing a medical legal report, and it covers all overhead expenses, including transcription and typing expenses, all staff overhead expenses, and we'll talk about some of these as we go here in a minute. Well, let's just take a look here at the history and physical exam. Well, this is a doctor-related activity here. This is related to the doctor. And the DWC estimates that in approximately 2 hours, in some cases less, in some cases more, the doctor can obtain a history and can complete the physical examination in approximately 2 hours. The review of records, the Division of Workers' Compensation estimates that this should approximately take 2 hours for up to 200 pages of medical records. You can estimate 1 hour of time involved for each 100 pages of medical records. So that includes all the sorting and the collating of the medical records, and then in the body of your report, reviewing and summarizing those medical records within the body of your report, such that your review of records appears presentable, logical, legible, and in chronologic order within the body of your report. For that, the division estimates approximately 2 hours of time. Then, finally, for the preparation of the medical legal report, where you as the doctor assemble and synthesize all the data, put together your report, put in all of your examination findings, all of your findings on your activities of daily living assessment, your diagnostic study findings, and you answer the questions that are required of you under CCR 35.5C1. These are the questions that come to us in the cover letters that we receive. And then finally, when you proofread your report, you type it, you print it, you bill it, and mail that report, they estimate that that should take approximately 2 hours, for a total here of 6 hours for the totality of the evaluation. Now, in order to complete this evaluation in 6 hours, you have to be good, you have to be fast, you have to be streamlined, you have to be efficient, you have to be effective. In any lapse in any one of these areas, any lapse is going to expand your time and diminish your profitability and diminish your hourly rate that's projected for you under this billing code. Now, in addition to all of these doctor activities, and some of these are combined staff activities as well, and we consider the staff activities to be over here in the overhead expenses column. So some of the overhead expenses involved with each of your evaluations include your staff administration time, includes your travel time as you travel either to your own office or to a satellite office, which may be 30 minutes away, maybe an hour away. I know some qualified medical evaluators that travel from Northern California to Southern California by plane, by a plane flight, with an overnight hotel stay for some of their evaluations. And all of that cost is covered under the same fee for this ML201 billing code. Any rent that you pay at a satellite office certificate, or even the rent at your own office for the time that you have carved out of your office schedule to conduct the qualified medical evaluation, that's included in your overhead. Any supplies such as paper, such as envelopes, such as stamps, are all included in overhead expenses. And then what's frequently not considered is the billing expenses. The billing expenses. And some evaluators use an outside billing service or a dedicated in-office billing staff who does only billing. And if the billing expense wasn't a big deal, if it's not a big deal, the rebilling expense, as you start to receive explanations of benefits that contain less than your full reimbursement for your service rendered, your billing and rebilling, and I should say and rebilling and rebilling and rebilling expenses can start to escalate and drive your overhead expenses up even greater than they were already had this report been reimbursed in a single cycle of billing action. So let's take a look for a moment just at one aspect of the overhead expenses here. And let's take a look at billing expenses and the cost of rebilling expenses. And let me share with you some ideas as to what you may not have considered as to how rebilling is eroding your profitability as a qualified medical evaluator. So let's just take a look at billing disputes now. Let's say, for example, you've done a comprehensive initial medical legal evaluation. It included 199 pages of medical records. You've billed $2,015 and you receive an EOB with either a $0 reimbursement or some reduction of reimbursement. And this could apply to any billing level, any billing code that involves what you consider to be a reduction or an incomplete or less than full reimbursement of your billed amount. Well, the Division of Workers' Compensation has established a procedure for handling billing disputes, and it's referred to as independent bill review. So let's read this together. It tells us that medical treatment and medical legal billing, and this is what relates to us, medical legal billing disputes, are resolved through an independent bill review process. A medical provider who disagrees with the amount paid by a claims administrator on a properly documented bill may apply for independent bill review. Independent bill review applies to any medical service bill where the date of service is on or after January 13 and the fee is determined by a fee schedule, such as our new medical legal fee schedule. So notice this. This is where your profitability begins to get eroded, and this is where the parties begin to exploit their incentive under the new medical legal billing schedule, medical legal fee schedule. It tells us that a medical provider who disputes payment for medical service or medical legal billing must submit a timely, so you're constrained by time. Timely means within 30 days. So if you receive an incomplete reimbursement, you're now under a new pressure time crunch for having that bill reviewed by a higher authority. So that deals with your second review. If the provider disagrees with the outcome of the second review, they must request IBR within 30 days after service of a second review decision. Now, the second review, the second review is a request to the claims administrator. So when the claims administrator fails to fully reimburse you for your first cycle of billing, you then submit the same billing to the same claims administrator and ask them to review it a second time. So there's no fee for this, there's no charge for this, there's no penalty to the claims administrator for this. So let me ask you, if you were a claims administrator, would you ever reimburse any billed service the first time? Why would you reimburse it the first time if there's no penalty for requiring the biller, meaning us as evaluators, to bill that bill a second time? Why would you not do that? You could adopt that as a strategy, because there's a certain percentage of these disputed bills that never get submitted for a second review to the claims administrator. They never get submitted. So as a claims administrator, if I was a claims administrator or a supervisor, I would always demand that each medical provider submit a second review request. Then if the provider, which is us, disagrees with the outcome of the second review, they may then request IBR within 30 days after service of the second review decision. And the independent bill review process, this application for IBR, is not something small. It's not something easy. It's something that's very time intensive, and it has a fee associated with it. So here is the application, request for independent bill review. Here it is. And notice this detailed, lengthy, time-consuming form where you have to attach all of these documents: your original billing, your explanation of review, your request for second bill review, the explanation of the second review, any additional discussion that you want to submit. In other words, this is a lengthy, time-consuming application for your staff to have to go through. And in addition, accompanying this application for independent bill review is you must attach a fee of $335 to accompany this form. And this is what gives the claims payer great incentive to refuse to pay your bill. They're basically challenging you to file an application for independent bill review, which they know is going to suck up hours of your staff time in completing and compiling this entire application, and it's going to suck out any profitability from you, as you have to forward and front the cost of $335 just to have the bill reviewed by an independent evaluator. So let's take a look at this. Now that we know this, let's see how this can apply to some of the billing codes that we routinely bill with, and let's take a look at some of the incentives built in each of those codes. And we're talking about incentives not only of the payers, but also how our reactionary and protective defense mechanisms, incentives ourselves, have to be operative in order to compensate for these profitability sappers, so that we can continue to remain profitable doing these medical legal evaluations. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the incentives that are operative under each of these medical legal billing codes. So first, under the ML200, this is the missed appointment fee. The parties have an incentive. They have an incentive that if they're going to cancel this appointment, they want to cancel the appointment greater than 6 business days out from the date of the scheduled face-to-face evaluation. Now, I can tell you that yesterday, just yesterday, this is being recorded on a Tuesday, so yesterday was Monday, and I have an evaluation coming up in 2 days on a Thursday. So just yesterday, Monday, 3 days from the evaluation, we received a phone call from the claims administrator requesting to reschedule the evaluation scheduled for Thursday, scheduled within 3 days. So we advised the claims administrator that we'd be happy to reschedule that appointment, but that appointment, the canceled appointment, would be subject to the ML200 missed appointment fee at $503.75. And the claims payer, she surprised us with a new curveball, and she said, well, I'm not canceling the appointment. I'm just rescheduling the appointment. This isn't a canceled appointment. This is just a rescheduled appointment. Now, do you think that there's a chance that we could take the administrative time to have the staff reschedule this appointment, re-notify the parties, re-notify the examinee, re-mail out letters, and go through the entire rescheduling process only to have the case settle in 15 days and 30 days before the next scheduled evaluation? Do you think that's possible? And if there was no missed appointment fee for that, do you see how that we could suffer the complete loss of all that staff administrative time, doctor time, if the reschedule is not also considered within the missed appointment fee? And of course, the rescheduled appointment involves a cancellation of the first appointment, and so of course the missed appointment fee would apply. But the parties, the claims payer, she tried she tried to create a reason to get out of paying the missed appointment fee, and that tells you about the incentive of the parties. They simply have no intention to have us paid for our time and for the work that we do, or I should say they want to pay us as little as possible for the time that we put into these evaluations. Well, if that's true, then what is the doctor's incentive? The doctor's incentive is to postpone all work on the evaluation until 6 days out, because if that appointment cancels, reschedules, case settles, or what have you, and you've done any work on the evaluation, then all of your time, effort, and energy, in addition to your staff's time, effort, and energy, is lost and is unreimbursed. So this tells us that all evaluations come together. They come together in the last week before the face-to-face evaluation, and that's simply because of the design of the language of this code. Now, under the ML201, the party's incentive is to send you 200 or less pages of medical records so that there's no additional pages of medical records billed. Their incentive is to have you evaluate multiple body parts, multiple dates of injury. Their incentive is to eliminate the interpreter reimbursement, and their incentive is to underpay additional pages of medical records. Now, with regards to the interpreter reimbursement, I'm looking at an EOB right here, and this was for a recent date of service. It was a basic comprehensive medical legal evaluation with an interpreter for a total billing of $2,216.15. So that included $201.50 for the interpreter fee, and the interpreter fee was reduced out of the payment with an explanation code. And you know how these claims payers use explanation codes. It says the explanation code is: the charge exceeds the official medical fee schedule allowance. Okay, so we're not billing under the official medical fee schedule. We're billing under the medical legal fee schedule. So this explanation code has nothing to do with anything. It says the charge has been adjusted to the scheduled allowance. The frequency of this procedure code exceeds the limitations specified in the fee schedule, and these explanation codes, as you can tell, mean nothing. And so the claims payer has eliminated $201.50 of our legitimate billing for the interpreter, because the claims payer knows that in order to capture that $201.50, we have to invest additional staff time in going through a second bill review process with the claims payer. And if the claims payer refuses to pay it, then we have to go through the additional at least 1 hour application process of applying to independent bill review, for which the fee is $335, and they know that most offices won't fight for this additional tiny fee compared to the cost of recovering this fee. It basically becomes prohibitive to try and recapture this fee based on the overhead expense just in staff time and application fees. The same thing goes for the additional pages of medical records. I have another EOB right here, which has many additional pages of medical records billed in the amount of $687. This was for a supplemental report. We billed $650 for the supplemental report. There was many pages of additional medical records for an additional $687. And we received reimbursement only for the supplemental report. And again, they have explanation codes to explain the failure to reimburse the additional pages of medical records, and it's because of the incentive and the added costs of fighting for those additional fees. Well, if all of this is true, and you know that it is if you've been involved in this type of work for any length of time, the doctor's incentive to offset these costs is to complete the evaluation and the report quickly. Only by completing the report quickly is there enough time left, is there enough funds left in the fund of $2,015 to offset all of the work and all of the potential losses that are involved with this particular billing code. Now finally, next, the ML202, the incentive of the parties is to provide less than 200 pages of medical records, add dates of injury, add body parts, and add disputed issues, and get the qualified medical evaluator to do additional work on a reevaluation that was not involved with the initial evaluation for a reduced reimbursement rate, $700 less than the initial evaluation rate. If that's true, then you as the evaluator need to complete the evaluation and the report quickly. Time shall be of the essence, and you want to diminish the time involved with all of the activities in order that you may remain profitable against the wishes of the parties who want to extract more work and more time from you for the same lowered fee. Next, under the ML203, the supplemental report, we won't go into this in great detail because I want to get to the next one. Again, you as the medical evaluator need to get good at resolving disputed issues. And by good, I mean being able to complete the evaluation and the report quickly, so that you can remain profitable. Now, let's take a look at the ML204. This is the billing code that we use for our deposition testimony. Under the ML204, this is a $910 reimbursement rate. The incentive of the parties is to not pay the doctor in advance, of the deposition, and also make the doctor travel as far as possible, as close as possible to the evaluation location. And here I'm talking about those depositions that are required to be face-to-face, in the non-Zoominar era. Right now we're in the Zoominar era, but that's going to end soon. And you can expect to have to travel for the deposition, and your travel time and your travel costs, of course, will be extracted from the reimbursement that you receive under this billing code. Now, I just have a case on my desk right now where the doctor has a deposition tomorrow. It's actually tomorrow. And as of today, the doctor has not been paid in advance. and we have reason to believe that no party has sent the doctor any payment or intends to send the doctor any payment for this deposition. So in that case, the doctor is going to have to bill the evaluation, or I should say the staff is going to have to devote their time, their energy, their effort, and their resources to billing for the deposition fees. The staff and the doctor are going to have to mail that billing, and they're going to have to wait up to 60 days for the first explanation of benefits to come through. And imagine an explanation of benefits coming through with a reimbursement rate of, let's say, $725 for a reduction of $135, in which case the staff is going to have to rebill. It's going to have to rebill. That remaining balance is going to have to submit that for a second bill review, and they're going to have to wait an additional 59 days, at which time they may or may not receive that additional $135. In other words, the party's incentive to not pay the doctor in advance is very, very expensive on the doctor. And so in order to offset that potential loss, what is the doctor's incentive? The doctor's incentive at the deposition is first to minimize the preparation time involved with the deposition, especially if you're not getting paid in advance, and there's a good chance that your bill is going to be reduced by the claims payer, is to minimize the preparation time involved with the deposition. And if the deposition raises issues for which you're not prepared, that will create an additional billable service for you, either in the form of a supplemental report and or a new face-to-face evaluation, wherein you can capture any losses that you've sustained at the expense of the parties exercising their incentives. Finally, on the -93 interpreter fee, in those cases where you don't get paid for the interpreter fee, you can anticipate this in advance. If you were a claims payer, why would you pay the interpreter fee when it's so expensive for the doctor, so expensive and time consuming for the doctor to have to contend or contest that fee reduction? Why would you even pay it? I would instruct all my claims payers to not pay that fee. So how can you as the doctor offset these losses? You have to complete the evaluation, and especially the face-to-face portion of the evaluation quickly, in order to remain profitable, in order to protect your hourly rate under the new medical legal fee schedule. So you might be wondering to yourself, oh my God, is there any silver lining to this work that we do? Is there any hope that I can ever become profitable as a qualified medical evaluator? Well, I'm here to tell you that there is hope for you as a qualified medical evaluator, and your profitability rests in your ability to be efficient and time effective in your evaluation procedure. And throughout the remainder of today's discussion, I want to share with you some ideas as to exactly how you can do that. So in every evaluation that we conduct, there are some factors that we cannot control, and there are some factors that we can control. And if it's true that there's factors that we cannot control, then we should take a look at the factors that we can control, and we should take iron-fisted control over each of these in order to be efficient, time-effective, streamlined, and very, very profitable in the factors that we can control. Now, some of the things that we cannot control is the appointments that cancel, schedule, or postpone. You know, when you set an appointment for a qualified medical evaluation, that draws a line in the sand, and that marks the date upon which the parties begin work and begin negotiations to try and settle that case, in which case they have no need for you as the qualified medical evaluator. In other words, your setting the appointment initiates a sequence of events that has as its intended outcome to obviate or negate your need for a qualified medical evaluation. And that's something that's completely out of our control. Well, examinees or parties' wrong address on demographics and incomplete information that comes in to us from the parties When they request an evaluation, that's something we have no control over. The examinee and the interpreter not showing or showing late to the evaluation and thereby extending the time involved with the evaluation, this is not something we have much or any control over. When the examinee fails to complete their paperwork, and many, many other things are outside of our control as qualified medical evaluators, and this is just a small list, just to exemplify or give you some examples as to some of those things that are out of our control. Well, some things that we can control, over which we need to take iron-fisted control, is a strong scheduling procedure such that every single evaluation for whom we provide an appointment, day, date, and time, we confirm that that appointment is a fully compensable, reimbursable appointment, and it's not one or the other parties just using you as the qualified medical evaluator to get the appointment on the schedule so as to leverage the other party or twist the elbow of the other party, and simply using you as a pawn to get the appointment on the schedule. We want to confirm that that appointment is actually a fully compensable and reimbursable appointment. A strong confirmation procedure to ensure that all of the parties show up to the evaluation at the appointed day, date, and time, and even earlier than the appointed time, will help you be time effective and efficient at the face-to-face evaluation. Perhaps most importantly of all is to have an efficient, targeted, and focused evaluation procedure that's targeted specifically to the issues in dispute, and that has as its purpose to be able to answer the questions in the cover letters that you receive from the parties. If you can go into each evaluation targeted and focused, knowing that the questions that the parties have, knowing the questions that the parties need you to answer and resolve, will allow your evaluation to be very, very time effective and time efficient and profitable. Having a strong billing procedure is something that you can control, such that all of your bills that go out of your office are accompanied by all the required forms, are sent to the appropriate parties, are sent to the proper billing addresses, and this gives you your best chance of having that bill reimbursed on a single cycle of action. And then finally, under the new QME regulations, serving your report electronically is a great, great time saver as well, and also saves money on supplies and expenses within the office, and this is something that you can control to help enhance the profitability of your evaluation. Now, probably the single greatest profitability strategy that I can share with you regarding all of these factors that you can control has to deal with eliminating second cycles of action. And there's several cycles that you want to take a look at, and you want to attempt to perfect each of these cycles of action such that all of your procedures can be completed the first time through on the first and singular cycle of action, because each second cycle of action, each duplication of effort, each duplication of action simply serves to erode the profitability of your evaluation, and many of these cycles of action are under your direct control. So I'm encouraging you to take a look at your administrative procedures and look for areas wherein you can eliminate second cycles of action, and I'll share some of those with you here in just a second. Similarly, in your face-to-face evaluation, you want to complete all of your procedures on the first initial pass, the first pass metabolism. If we're talking about GI physiology, you want to complete all of the necessary measurements. You want to get all of the necessary history questions answered in the single cycle of action at the face-to-face evaluation. On your report writing procedure, you want to use templates that you've created once that you can use over and over and over again, such that your reports can be completed in the fewest or even a single cycle of action. Similarly, on your report submission, you want to complete that in a single cycle of action such that no report has to be reprinted twice. You don't get reports returned to you undelivered. You don't get calls from claims administrators in 45 days asking, did you submit the report? Did the examinee show for the appointment? Sometimes you'll get a call from the applicant attorney, and the applicant attorney will say, Was the report ever issued? Meaning that they never got the report because perhaps the legal assistant is working from home and does not have access to the mail at the office. And so you want to try and take all of these things into consideration such that you can get all of these actions done in a single cycle of action. I want you to declare war on second cycles of action. And let me give you some ideas as to how you can do that just on this one aspect here on the admin of your cases. So I want you to take a look at all of your efforts and all of your actions throughout the entirety of your medical legal evaluation and declare war on second cycles of action. And let me just share with you a couple of ideas on the admin side that will help you streamline and become much more profitable by reducing staff costs, overhead costs, and overall costs associated with the expenses associated with your evaluation. So always seek to eliminate and declare war on second cycles of action. So for example, on your scheduling procedure, make sure to get all information in one single cycle of action. And that includes getting accurate demographic data on the examinee the first time through. Think about how you could do that. How could you get accurate, not just the information that the parties have, but how can you ensure that that information is accurate and that you're not going to get something returned from the post office saying that they could not deliver your appointment notification to the examinee because there's no such number or no such person at that particular address. So your demographic information must be accurate and you must get it in one cycle of action. Part of an efficient single cycle of action scheduling procedure involves getting the panel with 2 strikes on it, leaving you as the last evaluator standing. Anything less than a panel with 2 strikes on it is going to require multiple cycles of action and starts to erode the quality of the evaluation. So don't just accept an appointment with a panel that has no strikes on it and just your name on it. That's not the same as a panel that's gone through the strike process of all the parties, and it's going to end up costing you money if you get a panel that has less than 2 strikes with no objection to you as the last person standing. Make sure to get a copy of QME Form 106 with each request for a new evaluation appointment. QME Form 106 tells you what is the labor code that's driving the need for the evaluation. And if you can determine the labor code that's driving the need for the evaluation, it tells you exactly what you need to do in the evaluation, and even more importantly perhaps, it tells you what you do not need to do in that particular evaluation. And as I said, always ask for strike letters or evidences of strike that leave you as the evaluator as the last evaluator standing. Confirmation procedure, similarly, get it done in one single cycle of action. Each additional cycle of action is going to contribute to escalating overhead costs. Billing procedures and also service of the report, get it done in one single cycle of action. The goal is to have your bill paid on the first submission of the bill. So make sure to include all the proper billing codes, all the proper documentation. Make sure to include the declaration and attestation if you're billing for additional page counts, and make sure that your billing is as complete as possible, because we cannot afford to hurry on this procedure. We can't afford to hurry this through. Any hurried effort at the billing procedure is going to result in a rejection by the claims payer, and it's going to cost you much more to go through the second cycle of action than it would have cost you to go through the single cycle of action correctly the first time through. And then finally, as I suggested earlier, with electronic service of reports, we can electronically serve the parties with one single mouse click and compare that to the multiple cycles of action involved with snail mail service of the report. I mean, each report that you send out needs at least 4 copies, sometimes 5 copies I say 5 copies because sometimes there's a copy that goes to the claims administrator and a separate copy goes to the billing service of the claims administrator. That is, if you want it to get there. And so some of these reports require 5 full copies of the report to be sent out, when the electronic service to the parties can be done in a single mouse click. So using admin as an example, we want to declare war on second cycles of action, and I want you to adopt this as a policy beginning today and moving forward with each and every one of your evaluations from now on. So doctors, I hope these ideas help you. You know, we deserve to be paid. We deserve to be paid timely. We deserve to be paid well, and we deserve to be paid in full for the hard work that we do as qualified medical evaluators. And I want to leave you with a story that helps illustrate this point of how you need to protect your fees and how you need to guard against unnecessary escalating overhead costs at the expense of the parties attempting to exercise their incentives under the new medical legal fee schedule. And I remember a time back early in my career as a chiropractor. Many of you know me know that I'm a chiropractor. And back early in my chiropractic career, I was attending practice management training sessions in order to develop and grow my practice as a chiropractor in my community. And I remember one particular seminar where the seminar speaker began the seminar by asking all of the chiropractors in the audience. He asked us, he said, "How many of you out here give discounts to your patients?" And he elaborated on that a little bit further. "How many of you give free services to kids? And how many of you give discounts when patients complain that they're having a tough time?" And the point was, how many of you out there in the audience give discounts? And of course, every single chiropractor in the office, in the audience, raised their hand to admit that they provide discounts for their patients who either need or who request a discount. At which time the seminar speaker put his face in his hands and he shook his head back and forth. And with great dramatic effect, he took a deep breath and he paused. And when he began speaking, he spoke with profound words. And he said, "You're giving away the profits. You're giving away the part of the reimbursement that's intended for you. You're giving away the profit." He said, "You still have your staff costs, correct?" And everyone shook their head in a revelation of realization. And he said, "You still have to pay your rent, correct?" And everyone shook their head. And he said, "You still have your insurance, you still have your x-ray fees, you still have your lighting and electrical costs. All of those fees have to be paid out of the discounted fee. The part that you're giving away is the part that's intended for you. You're giving away the profits." And so it is with us as qualified medical evaluators. All of these faces and forces that are exercising their incentive under the new medical legal fee schedule conspire to reduce the profitability of our evaluations, which simply erodes the profitability, which is the part intended for us. So with these suggestions that I'm sharing with you today, these are some ideas that you can use with each and every one of your evaluations to protect your profitability and to enhance your solvency as a qualified medical evaluator. So doctors, I hope this helps you, and I hope you take these considerations into effect and implement them with all of your evaluations moving forward. So in closing, I want to thank you for your commitment to excellence. I want to thank you for your dedication to continuous learning. And I want to thank you for your ongoing service to California's injured workers. For now, this is Dr. Perry Carpenter wishing you best of success in your career as a qualified medical evaluator.